The city of Taipei is the provisional capital of the Republic of China, the fastest growing travel discovery on a tour to the interesting and colorful lands of the Orient and the China Sea. It is China, mirrored in miniature, old and new alike. It is the only place in the free world where one can see the Chinese people on their home ground, a most interesting and delightful new destination. We invite you to share its Chinese way of life, to marvel at its art treasures, to savoir its matchless cuisine, to explore its scenic grandeur. Only 17 hours flying time from Los Angeles to San Francisco, the silver wings of 3 international airlines will whisk you across the blue Pacific and the China Seas to Taiwan, to Taipei International Airport. As you step from your jet airliner, you are transplanted as though upon a magic carpet into the oriental fascination and glamour of this island beautiful, as the Portuguese named it when they discovered it, Formosa. And incidentally, flying between Japan and Hong Kong or Manila, stopovers in Taiwan can be made and enjoyed without paying an extra fare. It is now one of the great new highlights of around the world adventure by plane. With a history of less than a century, Taipei is the largest and most modern city of the country. In the past score of years, it has become one of the showplaces of progress in Asia. Now we look upon a big bustling city with touches of the Orient, such as the old gate, at one time the entrance to a walled city, protected from the pirates that at one time roamed the China Sea. And in the heart of the busy city is a lovely park, an oasis. It is just in front of the presidential palace, called Longevity Park, in honor of President Chiang Kai-shek. It is not the White House of the Republic, but the presidential offices. It's a big, bustling metropolis of 1.25 million people. Its prosperity is reflected in the busy central business district. Its streets and boulevards are jammed with cars, buses, taxis, trucks, motorbikes, and bicycles, morning, noon, and night. This is one of the new high-rise buildings, just completed a little over a year ago. From its rooftop restaurant, you look down upon one of the busy boulevards beneath. Not unlike many of our western cities or the large metropolitan cities of the continent of Europe, but always that interesting touch of the far-off Orient. And there are many popular and wonderful hotels there today to suit every taste, every purse. The Mandarin is the newest of 350 air-conditioned rooms. It has a charming setting with a pool of lotus flowers and pagodas and bridges, a delightful place to stop while you're enjoying Taipei. And then, too, along one of the busy boulevards is the Ambassador Hotel. That is used by many of the tour groups visiting Taiwan. But most famous of all is the Grand Hotel. That is now considered to be one of the great luxury hotels of the Orient. It was built by the Republic of China. There, many of the great diplomats of the world are housed during their visit to Taiwan. It is considered to be one of the finest examples of classical Chinese architecture in existence. Nothing was spared to make it this glamorous building such as we look upon it today. And as you stroll about the garden of the Grand Hotel, you might come upon a group of models displaying the different gowns and dresses you might purchase there. These girls are displaying the old traditional costumes of China, as well as the new modern dresses which reflect the Chinese influence. Many tourists, have them made to order while they're visiting Taipei. They're wonderful for cocktail dresses, for evening gowns. And aren't those the most beautiful models? But you see, as time marches on, the long Chinese styles are gradually getting shorter and shorter. I'm sure they'll have the mini types of dresses there, too, very shortly. Now, isn't that a smart outfit on the right? And the other model is wearing the very costly and lovely gowns of the finely dressed Chinese women of old. You see very few of them today. But that was the grand dress of Chinese women. Not long ago, they still wear them to many of the great social functions. The Grand Hotel is famous for its marble staircase. We left the Grand Hotel to take a tour of the city of Taipei. There you can go by private motor car or by one of these fine modern air-conditioned buses. One of the highlights of Taipei is Lungshan Temple. There you'll always find devout Buddhists coming there to worship, to pray. They light their joss sticks. They buy fortune sticks. They pray for some sick or ill relative or friend. It seems to go on day and night throughout Taipei. They're a very devout people. I have never seen more elaborate temple rooftops. The roofs are of glaze-colored tile, embellished with all of this porcelain ornamentation. Every design is different. Scores and scores of these designs on every rooftop of the temple. Here you realize that you're just about as far away from home as you could possibly get. Here on the other side of the world, a touch of old China. At the Taoist temple, the women were praying and lighting their joss sticks too. Many of them bring offerings and place them upon the tables for the monks and the priests of the temple to enjoy. This was the Shrine of Fertility. Just beyond, this woman had brought offerings to the temple. A chicken, which would be enjoyed by the monks and the priests at that famous temple. One of Madame Chiang Kai-shek's great and important charities is a home for the war orphans. Now the older orphan boys have a band. Now they may not be the greatest musicians in the world, but I couldn't help but wonder what our youngsters here at home would do if they were trying to play Chinese instruments. And there, too, the small fry, the youngsters, are so wonderfully well kept. Oh, I visited many orphans' asylums in our travels throughout the world. I have never seen finer looking children, so healthy and happy, well dressed, clean. They have the finest accommodations there, dormitory rooms, excellent food. They're very lucky orphans. And the older orphan girls have their orchestra too, a classical type of Chinese orchestra with the traditional instruments. Another of Madame Chiang Kai-shek's favorite charities is a home for crippled children. These unfortunate youngsters were mostly victims of polio, but brave kiddies that actually taught not to cry when they fall, to protect their faces and heads, and then pick themselves up. They too were a wonderful group of youngsters. Rather sad to see, but we can certainly appreciate the wonderful way in which they're taken care of here in this home. They got a group of the youngsters together to sing this song for our cameras and recorders. Jesus loves me. In Chinese, of course. In Taipei, the building of which they're very proud, their new science hall. Inside, they have an educational television station as well as a planetarium. Next to it is the historical museum. The facade is of true Chinese design. But most famous of all is the new National Palace Museum, considered to be one of the world's finest museums of Oriental art. It was built there at a cost of many millions of dollars. How they got to the royal collections from the palaces of Pekin and Nankin is still a mystery. Here in the main hall is a statue of Sun Yat-sen, the founder of the Chinese Republic. And in those great glass cases are many paintings centuries old, some of the greatest art treasures of old China. This is one of the paintings on silk, centuries old, showing the method of travel of the emperors and empresses of old China. So wonderfully well preserved. The colors so brilliant you'd think that had been painted but yesterday. Here in the museum is one of their ancient bronze vases, a double wine container. This was an ancient type of distilling apparatus. And this old wine jug in the form of an elephant. And they did not have elephants in China, so they must have had some communication, of course, at that time with the peoples of Ceylon or possibly India. This is a bronze incense burner. Now this bronze bowl is actually the symbol of the National Palace Museum. Then too, they must have had some communication with Persia, for these pieces are certainly Persian in design. Encrusted with semi-precious stones. And of course all of these pieces are priceless. They're kept in heavily guarded cases. They took them out of their cases so that we could film them. They locked all of the doors of the museum. They had guards with big locked metal cases bring them from the cases to our filming tables in the basement. This is a magnificent porcelain vase, centuries and centuries old, as is this porcelain incense burner. This vase was one of my favorites. Looking at the wonderful work in the hand-painted designs of that vase, you cannot appreciate, it's difficult to appreciate the fact that it was painted so many, many centuries ago. Again, it looks as though it had been done but yesterday. And of course, they have a wonderful collection of hundreds of pieces of jade. This is a white jade incense container, and this magnificently carved light green jade piece, about 14 inches in height. One of the most valuable pieces of jade in existence is a 21-inch carving in green jade. One of the most valuable pieces in the entire collection, and one of thousands you'd find in that great museum. And then, too, they have opera in Taipei. We attended a performance one evening. All of their operas are really legends, mythical legends of old China. They're not like our musical operas that we are familiar with here at home. Every movement, every costume, every mannerism has a symbolic meaning to the Chinese people. They all know that these are generals of the army, because only the generals carry the banners of their regiments upon their back. And I think the idea of a good show there is one that lasts a long time. The performance started at 7 o'clock in the evening. It didn't let out until after 12 o'clock at night. Well, I think it's time that we had a little nourishment, don't you? Well, they say you'll have the very finest Chinese food in the world in Taiwan. I'll never forget this dinner that we had at the Grand Hotel. The soup was served from this scooped out melon. A fruit soup, delicious, and the melon was all hand-carved on the exterior. Lobster is one of the many courses. As many as 17 courses in a fine Chinese dinner. Now here's a dish fit for a king. Broiled or roast squab. Vegetables and fish dishes in their marvelous sweet sour sauces, and chicken and shrimps cooked with walnuts. Well, it takes about 3 hours to dine at a fine Chinese dinner. And while you dine, you're entertained by the music of their typical orchestras. And here, too, they had another display of the modern Chinese gown. All, of course, can be made to order and purchase should you desire to bring back such lovely dresses from Taiwan for your festivities here at home. Well, one morning we left the Grand Hotel, this time by bus, for a tour of the countryside of Taiwan. Not many miles from Taipei, you'll come upon these quaint, picturesque little fishing towns and villages. The fishing boats are so interesting. Their design, their colorings, the painting. They usually go out to sea late in the afternoon. And early the following morning they will bring back their catch of silver from the China Sea. And along the coast are many interesting formations of rock and erosion, such as this natural arch looking out toward the sea beyond. And on Sunday, hundreds and hundreds of people from Taipei drive out to Iloilo National Park. There they have these unique formations. They look like giant mushrooms growing out of the golden sand. Actually, they're rocks. The formation is caused by thousands of centuries of wind and sand blowing in from the China Sea, carving these huge rocks into these mushroom-like shapes. The only place in all the world where we've come upon such formations. And as you drive through the countryside, through the deep valleys and over the hills of Taiwan, you look upon thousands of acres of rice fields, or rice paddies as they call them. And there the water buffalo is the valued beast of burden. Often the wealth of a farmer is judged by the number of water buffaloes he may own. They look like a very sturdy, hardy animal, and so they are, but the water buffalo has an unusually sensitive skin. If left out in the hot sun for more than a few hours at a time, its skin is apt to crack and become sore. Hence, every hour or so, they're given a respite from their work to cool off in the water and mud of a nearby pool, then brought back along the roadways to be harnessed up to a plow, go to work again in one of the rice paddies. After the field of the paddy is plowed, it is flooded with water, and then the women do the work of planting the young rice shoots. This overseer is dealing out the different bundles of rice shoots. They're planted very carefully, almost with a ruler. Hard, laborious work, trudging about up to their knees, you might say, in mud and silt, bending over the hot sun day after day. For they have 3 crops of rice in Taiwan, quite unique in the world of agriculture, so their work is never ending. While they're planting one rice paddy, they're harvesting another. I was amazed to find very little modern equipment and machinery there. Most of the rice was harvested by hand. You might say they picked each individual stalk. Some told us it was a religion of old Chinese belief. After they harvest a bundle of rice, they'll come to this one rather crude, unique device which separates the grain from the stalk. It's pedaled by foot, and they have a big, large metal cylinder that revolves. The exterior is covered with little sharp, protruding nails, we might call them, which actually pull the rice from the stalk. But it's very efficient. You know, it's marvelous. You travel about the world, seeing all the different methods they use, which will finally give the very same result. And as you drive about the hills of Taiwan, you come upon women picking the leaves from the tea plants. Formosa, you know, is always famous for its wonderful quality of tea. It still is. They pick only the young, tender leaves. The women wear those long gloves which protect the backs of their hands, for the twigs are very sharp on the bushes of the tea plant. They gather the leaves together in that basket of a bag. Later they're processed and shipped, of course, to all parts of the world. And out here in the lovely hills of Taiwan is Sun Moon Lake. There, too, they have this very fine, very comfortable hotel with excellent food, the Evergreen Hotel. From the rooms you look out upon the delight and the beauty of one of the most charming resorts in all of China, Sun Moon Lake. It's an interesting name. It got its name from a mythical legend of old China, in which they said that a huge dragon captured the moon in one claw, the sun in the other, held them both captive in the water of this lake. The little island in the center is actually the geographical center of the island of Taiwan, the old island of Formosa. Oh, you can spend wonderful vacation days there, just gliding about the calm waters of the lake, enjoying the beauty of the lovely mountains and hills surrounding it. Are many of the estates there, estates of some of the wealthy people of Taipei, or just row about at will. There you get away from the rush, the hustle, the bustle of our modern world. No telephones, televisions, blasting radios to annoy you. And built on the slopes of a hill is another very fine hotel, the Sun Moon Hotel. At one end of the lake is an Amish village. The Amish are called the Aborigines of Taiwan, the original people of the old island of Formosa. This Amish girl was rowing back to her little village along the shore of Sun Moon Lake. We visited one of the Amish villages. There we had this very unusual and a very wonderful welcome, as you can see. Well, they knew we were coming, so they put on an exhibition of their different traditional dances. This is a type of one of their old sacrificial dances, performed on this religious heiau in front of a 22-foot image of one of their deities or gods. They have many different types of dances, and their music, I think, is most interesting. As you look at the faces as well as the costumes of these Amish people, you see they're quite different from the Chinese. They're not Chinese, they look more Polynesian, or I should say Melanesian. It is believed that they originally came from some part of Mongolia. That, of course, was thousands of years ago, settled here in this island in the China Sea. Some claim that they are the same origin as the American Indians. They also came from Mongolia, crossed over into our continent at the Bering Strait. Oh, about 15,000 years ago. Perhaps that accounts for the fact that they enjoy feathers in their costumes and headdresses. This is one of their harvest dances. Well, an unforgettable and thrilling trip by car or bus is over Taroko Gorge, called one of the seven wonders of the Orient. They have that very elaborate entrance to the gorge. The gorge is almost 20 miles in length, cut right through this range of marble mountains. It was built by 11,000 veterans of the Chinese army. 425 of those men lost their lives building the gorge. In memory of those men is a shrine built down near the bottom of the gorge called the Shrine of Eternal Spring. It is in the Army's country, so as you stop your car to admire the beauty of the gorge, you'll often come upon many of the pretty Army's girls there, all in their traditional dress. Oh, they have a score of bridges, zigzag back and forth across the deep, rushing waters of the river beneath. For thousands of centuries, that river has carved out this natural gorge in these mountains of marble. Unpassable not many years ago until they built the roadway through this gorge. Down in the bottom it is glistening white. But of course the waters of that rushing river has cleaned the marble. There are 51 tunnels. You might say they were hewn out by hand without the great modern equipment of machinery we have to build our tunnels today, and many tremendous windows where you can stop your car and look down into the dizzy depths of the gorge beneath. You come upon many waterfalls, rivulets of water coming down from the high mountains beyond, falling into these natural basins of marble, glittering in the sunlight like jewels. This is the real scenic grandeur and beauty of the hills and the mountains of that old island of Formosa, now with many touches of China, such as that pagoda entrance to a temple along the roadway, and the markings here on this boulder telling us when the road was built. At the end of the gorge, it is a rather new but very attractive pagoda. You'll find pagodas not only throughout Taiwan, but throughout old China. They were the symbol of classical architecture as well as the caste of the people. Only an emperor and empress could have more than 7 roofs on a pagoda. From the pagoda you can walk across this little footbridge, a suspension bridge, to that lovely and comfortable hotel beyond, where you could spend the night, start out back over the gorge in the morning, or continue your tour along the roadways of the island of Taiwan. Oh, it's such an interesting trip. Every turn of the road brings something of beauty or interest before your eyes or the lenses of your cameras. There they use the water buffalo to pull their carts along the roadways. There too we came upon this duck boy with his flock of ducks. They seem to thrive in the watery rice paddies after the rice is harvested, of course. Those ducks bring a very high price in the markets of Taipei. Every time we set up our cameras to film them, they'd turn and rush away in the other direction. And then, too, you'd pass many quaint little villages, tucked away in the valleys of these high mountains. And along the roadway, we came upon these young men drying noodles, of all things, right along the roadway. Well, you know, noodles really originated in China, not in Italy. They were brought there by Marco Polo centuries and centuries ago. They've always been one of the main staple foods of the Chinese people. And then, too, along the roadway, they'll put out their rice right on the road so that the wheels of tires will do the threshing for them. Very practical people, the Chinese. And you'll drive through, a score of these smaller towns and villages. In one of those towns, we came upon these youngsters selling their chow pups. Oh, they were the cutest little pups here in this cage on one of their bikes. I inquired the price. They brought about 20 cents to the youngsters in our money. And of course the Chinese have been world-renowned for their wonderful wood carving. Oh, they are real artists at this craft. You know, Chinese furniture and chests and screens are famous throughout the entire world. I have never seen finer carved panels than these. In fact, my associate and Bill Moore and I ordered 2 of these. We want to use them at home on a hi-fi set that we're building. They're carved from teak wood. I think this was the finest, at least the most attractive. But they're all lovely, something that you'd only find in China. There, too, in Taiwan, they have the largest image of the Lord Buddha in all the world. Most people think of the Kamada Buddha in Japan as being the largest. This one is 12 feet higher. Then there is the city of Tainan. That is the second largest city in Taiwan. It lacks the high-rise buildings, the great metropolis of the metropolitan atmosphere of Taiwan. Bill was interested in this side. He said, now they'll know that they have all modern conveniences there in Tainan as well. Here we could be on the streets of Peking or Canton. Then you'll not find supermarkets there, such as we're accustomed to at home. Most of the fruits, the vegetables, the produce is sold in the open-air marketplaces. And of course, there are always such interesting places to visit. There you can see what the people produce, what they buy and sell. The ways of life are melded into the marketplaces you visit. You can spend hours browsing about. Here we get a glimpse of the China of old, even in the modern cities of New Taiwan. Nearby, Xinjiang Lake is the reproduction of an old imperial palace, a most attractive building, and on the lake beyond is the 9-point bridge. That is typical of some of the architectural design of bridges in old China. And the twin pagodas, one the pagoda of spring, and the other the pagoda of autumn. And towering above one of the highest hills, as though reaching up into the heavens, is one of the finest pagodas of the land. Everything that they have built there has been done with an idea of beauty and color, and of course, the grandeur of old China. Well, from our drive about the island, we returned to the city of Taipei. It was dark when we arrived there. It looked like a different world. Seemingly hundreds of these large and very attractive electrical signs and neon lights. And I shall never forget the dinner we had that evening in the fine dining rooms of the President Hotel. There they feature one of the finest classical orchestras of China. I thought many of you might be interested in the types of instruments they use. Many so different from our instruments at home. This is a type of Chinese violin, an exotic-looking stringed instrument. This instrument was not unlike one of our mandolins, a different shape, of course. I was intrigued with this very unusual type of flute or piccolo they use. Their type of cello or a bass viol, and many different kinds of drums and gourds, and a zither type instrument, and then a display of wonderful dancing. Girls of the Chinese opera. Favorite Chinese dance, the flower dance, the dance of spring. Another one of their great dances is called the monkey dance. Just one of those facial expressions, exactly like a monkey. And as a finale, probably the best known dance. It's called the ribbon dance. Actually, the waving of the ribbons represents the wind. The wind in calm, the wind in turmoil and storm. everything must come to an end, even this delightful trip through the Orient. We have traveled halfway around the world to these exotic and colorful lands, this rich sample of China, a free democratic China, all in the frightening shadow of communist China and North Korea and North Vietnam. With our help, they may survive. They should have the backing and the support of the entire free world. For this is the frontier where either democracy or communism will live or will die.